Welcome to the Modernize or Die podcast, CFML News Edition, where we keep you up to date with everything going on in the Cold Fusion community. We'll share the latest news on events, releases to engines, frameworks, libraries, and tools, as well as spotlighting quality content from the community.
Hello, and welcome to the Modernize or Die podcast, CFML News Edition. It is March 30th, 2023. This is episode 189. I am Eric Peterson, and joining me is Mr. Brad Wood.
Hello, Eric. Hello, Cold Fusion World.
Good to talk to you all again. It's been a little break with some scheduling problems, but we're back. So thanks for going with us. And thank you to our sponsor, Ortus Solutions, the makers of all your favorite box products. You can say thank you to Ortus by liking and subscribing these videos on YouTube, starring our repos on GitHub, subscribing to this podcast in your podcast app of choice, coming over to CFCasts and signing up for a free or paid account, buying some awesome swag from our Box Life store, or buying any of Ortus's books, like 102 Cold Box Quick Tips and Tricks, or learn Modern Cold Fusion in 100 minutes. And my personal favorite, you can come to Into the Box 2023 in May. We'll talk more about that in a bit.
Yay, into the box.
Woohoo! You can also support us on Patreon. Our adjective of the day is our amiable Patreon supporters. I like to
Seems a little
choose
backhanded. I don't know, but
isn't that like
amiable
likable?
means, well, yeah, it means pleasant, but I mean, it'd be like calling them milk toast or something. But I don't know.
These are always meant as a compliment to our lovely Patreons, our amiable Patreon supporters.
Yes.
So thank you all. We'll tell you more about the perks and how you can join at the end of the podcast. On to some news and announcements.
So, in case you missed it, there was a critical security update for Cold Fusion, which came out just a couple weeks ago. And this is a pretty serious one. It affects basically, I think, like Cold Fusion 11 through 2021, except Cold Fusion 11 and 2016 are both obviously out of support and do not have patches. So if you were on either of those systems, update fast and swiftly. So Charlie Earhart helped report this, and he has a huge blog post that goes way into depth on top of the official security bulletin. But basically, it's a nasty one. It's a remote code execution, which means that a malicious actor can run arbitrary code of their choosing on your server. And of course, that's usually the gateway to all sorts of nasty things. So this is all part of the CF client functionality, which I don't think anybody really uses, but it won me $1,000 at one point when Adobe had a contest on using CF client. And I was one of only 2 entries in it. But even if you're not using CF client, doesn't matter. You can still get hacked through the vectors. So those updates are out there, and they are known to be actively exploited in the wild. I don't know to what extent, but you don't want to put off that update. And I believe the updates from Adobe are only just the security updates, so it should be fairly safe to go ahead and slap those on your servers, do some testing, and secure yourself against that vulnerability.
Also, in case you missed it, the State of the CF Union the State of the CF Union 2023 survey is still going on. You can head over to TerraTech and fill that out. As we've said before, it really helps us as module developers and framework developers know how best to target different engines, different features, things like that.
Yep, absolutely. We want to have as many responses to that as possible.
So Command Box just had a release, but you're not stopping on the goodies coming out.
Well, I've been bored, and there's been too much fun stuff to play with. So, yes, there's a handful of new, interesting little things I've added into Command Box. And I tweeted out about a handful of them. I've wanted to have a generic tree output helper for a while, kind of like when you do package list and we nest everything kind of recursively. I've wanted to have that for our file listings, So I refactored that package list command and built a generic tree command that we can use. And so now there's a tree listing for files. I also added a little helper for printing, an array of any size and columns across the terminal, mostly because every time I ran the help command, it annoyed me that it was just one big long line of commands at the top level. And I always thought to myself, I should put those in columns. And so finally built a helper for that. With some suggestion from you, Eric, built a little clipboard command, which just wraps up the Mac or the Windows binary for copying things to your clipboard from the command line. So you can run a command and just pipe the output into the clipboard command, and it'll go onto your Mac clipboard or your Windows clipboard, or Linux if you're using the right things that are installed. So just a handful of little fun additions that have gone into command box. I'm actually looking, I haven't told anybody this, I'm looking at probably putting out another quick command box release sometime soon, largely because there's a small little regression on servers where some of the debug console log output no longer shows up. And I fixed that on the bleeding edge, but I'd like to get that out there. And I don't know if I've actually talked about this either outside of Bortus. So you guys get all sorts of insider info when I'm on the podcast. I have preliminary support, and preliminary meaning it kind of works on my machine, and a couple of the people who've tested it. Support for Java 16 plus. I'd kind of been holding off on that for a long time, waiting for Adobe and Lucy to get around to supporting Java. Lucy 5.3.10 mostly sort of somewhat seems to work on Java 17. Adobe ColdFusion is planning on supporting Java 17 for ColdFusion 2023. In fact, they've even reached out to us internally because they've been testing some of our apps like Content Box and found issues with that, which is actually really, really cool when Adobe reaches out and says, hey, we're testing our new engine on your frameworks. I love that they're doing that. So I've done some fixes on the bleeding edge of command box as well. So what now, both the CLI itself and servers that you start, assuming the ColdFusion engine you're running is compatible with Java 16 and so on, command box itself will now support that as well. So yeah, just a handful of things that I'll probably try to put out in a little release at some point for command box. As always, the bleeding edge of command box is out there on our S3 bucket. If you run the upgrade -- latest command, it'll give you the URL for where you can go download it and play with it. And I'd love to have any feedback on that.
That's awesome. Yeah, that clipboard command I was asking Brad how to strip out ANSI characters. And of course, Brad being Brad's like, why do you need to do this? We're missing something. And now we have a clipboard command. So you're all welcome. Okay, we have a new Ortus product. We have a chat GPT bot for our documentation. So this was something that our love our clap track. This is something our Patreon supporters have been testing out with us, and now is released to anybody that wants to. It's available at chatgpt.ortussolutions.com. And I will switch over to my screen for a second to show this off. There's this little button, start chatting, and it says, ask me anything about an Ortus product, and hit enter. So maybe I'm going to say, how do I nest a view in another view?
Have you tested this? Do you know this will work?
We're going to find out. Response, you can nest a view in another view by using the render view method. Hey, look, it's correct. Add it right before it to render out the message box. Looks like this is coming from message box. But it's still correct. So, yeah, we fed it with many of our Git books. You can ask questions in here about ColdBox, Command Box, Wirebox, QB, I believe.
It's like 24
CB
Git
security.
books.
Yeah. And if you want to see how this was made, there is a session at Into the Box with, I know, Grant, and is it yourself, Brad, or?
No, I think Scott Steinbeck might be doing an AI session.
Okay.
Don't take my word for it, but I think I heard something about
We'll have to jump and look at the schedule. But there is a session about learning how we made this and learning how you can incorporate AI into your applications at Into the Box.
Yeah, and this is super cool. This came out of a little hack fest that Gavin and Grant Copley did at our yearly Ortus developer retreat that we had last month in Houston. We're all sitting around, and it's something they'd want to play with for a long time, and they finally sat down and figured out how to get it. And it's worth noting, we're not just proxying through to like the Chat GPT that you're familiar with using. that sort of free chat GPT is basically loaded with a bunch of information from Google from like last September. So it's kind of an outdated snapshot of the internet. We are using the same underlying API. OpenAI is the company that made ChatGPT, and we're using that same AI, but with our own custom load of modern data from the Git books that we have. And it is pretty cool. This just does actually cost money to Ortus every time you ask a question, but it's basically like 2 or 3 cents per question. So anyway, use your questions wisely. It's pretty fun to play with it, and yes, you can eventually ask it something like arcane enough you can get it to tell you something wrong. Congratulations, you cheated the system.
Yeah.
It won't know anything that's not in our Git book. So if you ask it how to bake a cake, I don't even know what it will say, but it probably won't be accurate because its knowledge domain is all of our Ortus documentation. And I'm excited. We had the potential. We have all these things we want to do with it. To be able to load it up with information from our blogs, load it up with information from our community forum, which has like over a decade worth of mailing list questions and things on it. So it supports all sorts of cool stuff that we want to do in the future. I want to ask it how to bake a cake.
Well, I have it right for you and right for our viewers. I'm sorry, I don't know.
It actually admits it doesn't know. Well, that's brave of it.
That makes it better than 50% of developers, right?
Yes, exactly.
All right. Finally, Adobe ColdFusion 2023 beta is now on ForgeBox. Or I should say the public beta is now on ForgeBox. If you knew the secret slug before, you might have been able to use the alpha. But now using CF Engine equals Adobe at 2023-beta, anybody can start up the new 2023 beta on their command box servers.
Yep. So test away, obviously not for production. You want to make sure you update the latest version of CFconfig to support it. But you can use it in Docker images, use it locally, whatever you need to do to be able to help test out the beta and give your feedback to Adobe.
Okay. Moving on to webinar, meetups, and workshops. As always, we'll talk about our Ortus event calendar, which should be the most up-to-date place for our events. And right now, what we're looking forward to is CF Summit East training workshop, which is next week on April 4th in Washington, D.C. This is with Luis Mahano doing ColdFusion MVC for dummies. And I feel like we should add for not dummies as well, because I don't know. Was I the only one that read that? And I'm like, I'm not a dummy. I just don't know this. Anyways. Probably too sensitive. That's okay. Anyway, so join Luis
next week. You can't call people dummies nowadays. Come on.
Join Luis next week before CF Summit East, and then stay for CF Summit East. It's a free conference that Adobe is putting on next week in Washington, D.C. All right, let's talk about some CFCasts updates. So we have more mastering command box videos. I think 5 have come out since the last podcast we've had. Let's see, mod CFML with IIS and bond code, CFconfig improvements, custom tray icon actions, mini box, and starting pure HTML servers.
Good stuff.
I love having these on CFCast as well, because if you just need a refresher on how one of these things work, you just jump to that video. It's a couple minutes long. It's easy to find. I love that. So glad these videos are coming out. Also, we had the March webinar with Luis, Secure Your ColdBox Apps with CB Security 3. That is now available on CFCast as well. And we have lots of great stuff coming. I was just asked today if I can get a Inertia.js and CB Inertia on my list of videos to start series to start making. So watch for that coming soon. All right, let's talk about some conferences. Next week's a big conference week.
It is. So Luis is going to CF Summit East, like we just discussed. But other people on the Ortus team, namely John Klassen and myself, are heading over to Atlanta, which is crazy. It's only like a few days that I'm flying out. It snuck up on me for Dev Nexus. Charlie Earhart, Cold Fusion troubleshooter extraordinaire, is one of the speakers this year at DevNexus, so be looking forward to seeing him. John and I are going to be attending. I'm doing a workshop with Venkat, who is one of our all-time favorite presenters in the Java world, and we'll be seeing what's going on in the Java community. Of course, we have the CF Summit East workshop, which Luis is doing in DC, and then the actual CF Summit East, which is April 6th on Thursday. So, lots of cool stuff going on there. I'm not familiar with Jay on the Beach. What's this one, Eric?
So this is one that Ordis is sponsoring out in Spain. So this is a DevOps, devs, and data sciences together in Malaga, Spain. If I pronounce that right, I don't speak Spanish well. So yes, Ordis is sponsoring this, and I don't know if Luis will be there, but I know he's close by. So that is Jay on the Beach for all of our European friends.
What does the J stand for? Is it like Java on the beach?
This one says, the URL says John on the beach.
Who's John?
Nope, it is.
Is
Never mind, I can't read.
oh,
This
it's
is
Jay on.
Jay on. I just saw John the Beach. I'm like, okay.
I saw the same thing.
So,
I assume this is a Java-esque conference, but their website doesn't necessarily. It just says a multinational company, blah blah blah, open source products, tooling, training. Oh wait, no, I'm reading the description of Ortus Solutions. Jeez, let me find the homepage. DevOps, devs, data scientists, big data. So basically, they rolled the dice of marketing keywords and created their conference description.
and confused me in the process and had me call it John on the Beach on the podcast. So
I don't know. I can't figure out what the heck this conference is about, but it looks pretty cool, and we're sponsoring it. So
I feel like it's along the similar lines as like that conference. It's like, what is that conference about? It's about whatever they want it to be, you know. All right, other ones coming up. Vue.js Live, May 12th and 15th, online and in London. You can learn more at vuejslive.com. And then comes our favorite and objectively the best conference of the year, Into the Box 2023. Tickets are available. This is in-person only. For those of you that are thinking that you'll wait for a online ticket, it is not coming. So please come get a ticket and come join us in Houston, May 17th through the 19th. We are so excited to have you. Lots of great workshops and sessions and new hands-on sessions, mariachi bands, and of course, getting to hang out and work with your favorite Ordis people. After Into the Box, we got VueConf US in New Orleans, May 24th through the 26th, Jazz, Code, and Vue. And then we head into one of our other favorite conferences, CF Camp.
yes,
They're
I'm excited to be going back there.
Their call for speakers has closed. So if you did submit a topic, you should be hearing from them about whether it's accepted or not, and we look forward to them announcing their schedule soon. That is June 22nd and 23rd in Freising, which is by the Munich airport.
Absolutely, yeah. If you can make it out to Germany, it's a great way to do some sightseeing for a few days and then attend the CF Camp conference. I'm super excited to be going back there.
And as always, if you need more conferences, comps.tech has you covered. Go ahead and search there for any other languages or frameworks or topics that you're looking for. And now we'll jump into the blogs, tweets, and videos of the week. This first one we have is by Michael Horn, talking about Chromebook CFML development environment tutorial. This is a good guide for any Linux machine, really. But he talks about how to take a Chromebook, enable the Linux, I don't know what you call it, give access to the Linux operating system underneath, and then set up in a development environment for Cold Fusion, Command Box, VS Code or Sublime Text, all of that. So good tutorial. Again, great for any Linux machine that you're setting this up on, not just Chromebooks.
I'll be honest, I saw his tweets on this, and I didn't realize you could do this with the Chromebook. I didn't really know much about them. I thought they were just limited to the Chrome OS, which I figured basically would make them worthless for any kind of, development. But that's actually really cool that you can basically tap into the underlying Linux and then start installing stuff. And I love the fact that he uses command box as part of his setup. Pretty cool.
The next blog, I had not thought of this this angle of it, is from James Moberg, and it's talking about generating sanitized email hashes as integers. And so the thing I hadn't thought of is he talked about the ability in different email providers, mainly Gmail popularized this, that periods are available anywhere, right? They're basically non-characters. And at the end of your email, you can add plus and any string, I probably, alpha numeric, and it will add that as a tag or a label in Gmail. A lot of email systems, though, will treat all those emails as unique because they do look unique if you're just doing a string comparison. Evidently, this was a problem at James's company because he found there were 279 attempts using 162 variations of their Gmail username on this form. And so he was figuring out how to create this sanitized email hash and storing it in their database so that they could be aware of these and track these and probably prevent them at some point. So I found the problem like something I didn't even think of, and really fascinating to read. Pretty simple solution, and James walks you through it. So it maybe a 5-minute read, maybe less. So really fascinating, actually. I'd never thought of those Gmail features as problems for people. In fact, I probably have exploited the fact that people don't think of those as the same email by adding a plus to my my free trial on some video streaming site somewhere.
Well, yeah,
So
I mean, I've definitely seen people that use it just to keep their inbox organized, but I hadn't really thought about the fact that people would use it to, bypass one per user sort of restrictions. It's kind
okay,
of cool that he used the hash code, basically just the Java string hash code at the end. I probably would just stuck it through the hash function and created an MD5 hash, but I suppose the hash codes being an integer are probably smaller to store in mass
yeah,
and faster to compare.
that's exactly what he talked about. It was faster to join and lower storage requirements.
Yep, cool.
Okay, we have a blog from Ben Nadal. Nope, that's the wrong title. One second. About Russian doll content wrapping with CF save content. That makes a lot more sense than the title that was currently in there. So this is the idea that you can continually wrap and redefine a variable to build the content up. It is a nice, I guess, peek under the hood if you use ColdBox or even Framework 1 or any of those on how layouts and views work. It's basically this. We just keep redefining the body from the most inner point and building out to your layout and just keep putting the views in. So not too much to show here, but just showing how save content and redefining the same variable, you can build something up. Also, ColdBox layouts and views already do this for you. So Brad, you had a post in the community forum this last week about a question brought up in the CFML Slack. Is using command box to run Adobe Cold Fusion sites safe in production? I feel like you must get these kind of questions a lot, like not just Adobe, but Lucy as well.
Doesn't Betteridge's law of headlines say that any headline that's a question should be answered no?
I know. So that's your fault, but
Well, technically, I didn't put a question mark at the end of the title. Yeah, so there's someone who came in Slack, and basically they've been having a discussion with one of their coworkers, basically about whether or not command box was a viable option for their company. And I think a lot of people just use command box without thinking about it because, hey, command box, cool, it works. They worked at a particularly large organization who, was rather picky about the software, and they wanted to make sure that their Adobe support plan would be honored. They wanted to make sure that the Adobe Cold Fusion server they were starting was an official Adobe Cold Fusion server, not some crazy hack job from Ortus. And they wanted to make sure that the, Undertow servlet container inside of command box was powerful enough to handle scalable production loads, which are fair questions, and the answer is basically yes to all of them. After talking back and forth with him, I had said, hey, this is actually like really good information, can I just make a community post about this so Google can index it, so ChatGPT can index it, and it would also give them a place to point his coworkers to, uh, who may possibly be slightly more inclined to listen to someone from Ortus than one of their coworkers. But basically, yeah, I mean the answers are, if you start an Adobe Cold Fusion server with command box, you are using Adobe Cold Fusion's war deployment, right? We just package it for ForgeBox. We're not changing it. Adobe will support will honor, if I can say the right word here, their support contract you may have with them. We have clients who have Ortus support contracts and they have Adobe support contracts. We support the command box portion. Adobe supports the Adobe portion. You're not stuck somewhere in an unsupported installation. And of course, JBoss Undertow is different than Tomcat, but it's extremely powerful. It's extremely popular. It's battle tested. It supports, the JBoss DAP platform that's built on top of Wildfly. So all that stuff is completely production ready. And then there's some more information we had talked about that he put down in a comment below, just kind of copying some more of the stuff I had talked about that just discusses why command box, I'm sorry, why Ortus rather didn't use Tomcat in command box. People will ask us that question. Well, why didn't you just use Tomcat, right? And there's a whole bunch of reasons why we built up our own servlet around Undertow, and they're all really good reasons. There's all a ton of configurability, a ton of control that we get that we basically wouldn't get if we didn't control the stack from top to bottom. So anyway, just a bit of apologetics here for why we do what we do, and how it's battle tested in production, and hopefully that can help people if they're having to have those sort of conversations, internally to justify why they might want to use it for deployments.
That's awesome. I think we should link out to that in the command box docs at some point too. I'm sure people are looking in there for the same answers to these questions.
Yep.
All right, finally, we're going to talk about another blog post from Ben Nadal about getting Fusion Reactor's user experience monitoring to play nicely with content security policies. So lots of three-letter acronyms there, UEM and CSPs. So Fusion Reactor's user experience monitoring is, in addition to their Java agent, which is profiling your server code, this is a JavaScript script that they have that will talk back to Fusion Reactor so you can get kind of a holistic view of how the front end is working as well. A content security policy, when enabled, is controlling what scripts can run on your website and what resources can be loaded. And so in this blog post, Ben takes us through getting the I think you pronounce it Anonce, Nonce. It's like a one-time code.
I've never known how to pronounce that, to be honest.
That goes on to your scripts. So you've generated your content security policy. You get your code. It's kind of like what's the cross site request forgery token, CSRF. There we go.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like that, where it's going to be different each time, and if it's included, the script can run, and if not, it won't run. Well, Fusion Reactors did its own thing to put the scripts in, and so this blog post talks about getting those connected. I think it's also good just to, especially if you haven't dealt with content security policies, to kind of ease you into what they do. They are very powerful, I think, and important, and also
I thought you were going to say annoying there for a second.
And also annoying. It's like cores. It's like, I hate this thing and I want it off. Also, I want it to protect me in production. So
Right. Yeah. I mean, and if you haven't used Fusion Reactor's user experience monitoring, it is pretty sweet. It basically injects some JavaScript code into each of your pages on the front end without you needing to manually write any code to do it. And then it tracks and monitors, from the user's browser perspective, how long it takes your page to render, what the user's seeing from their end, which is really cool. But obviously, to a browser who's been told to protect the website, it could look as though it's malicious JavaScript coming from somewhere else, which is obviously why you have to sometimes wrestle with the CSP stuff to make it all play nice. But it is a pretty cool feature. In my opinion, probably an underused feature that I would say most people probably don't know is even in Fusion Reactor.
Right. Now, as far as the content security policy stuff goes, did that get into CB security, or was that one of our things we want in CB security one day?
I don't know. That's a good question for Luis.
So if not, now I've said it out loud and people will want it. But I believe that's something that we are wanting to do in any case. Is CB security handles a ton of security concerns already, and content security policies would be right up there. If not,
No,
it can
honestly,
be its own.
It's something I could do in command box as well. Because
Yeah.
all you're really doing is returning an HTTP header that's from the web server that's telling the web browser, I want you to enforce these things for me.
Yeah, that could work as long as I mean you do have to have access to that nonce or that token. So unless you were going to turn it off completely, you might not be able to do it just on the command box server side. You end up having to add a script tag or adding the nonce to the script tag. Here, I'll bring up Ben's post. We can take a quick look at it, folks. If I come right down here, normally you'll have script type text JavaScript. That's just normal script. And if you have a strict content security policy, that will not run. It will not just run scripts. And it asks you to put in this nonce value here.
Right. Because this applies not just to JavaScript files, but just like an inline script block, which could be maybe injected via, a cross-site scripting vulnerability on your site.
Right. And so that you've generated and put that into the headers, as Brad said, it's a content security policy header, and you also need to put it on the script tag itself, each one that you're putting on. Obviously, if you have control of your website, this isn't a problem. If somebody else is trying to do it, they won't know what this value is. So, good times.
I could still build that in command box. If I make an undertow,
I've challenged Brad.
If I make an undertow wrapper that wraps the request, generates the nonce or whatever you call it, sticks it in the request scope, which I can do, so you can access it from Cold Fusion, and then sets the header at the end of the request, and that would probably work, unless I'm misunderstanding how it works.
I'm curious to see it now, just because
I am as well.
I've challenged you.
I'll be honest. I've only had to mess with the nonce stuff and the CSP once, and it was when I was adding some junk into our discourse forum, which of course has a bunch of the CSP stuff enabled, and then it was blocking like our embedded like Google Analytics tracking and things because I had to update it to use the stupid nonce.
Yeah. James Moberg in the chat says he's dealt with content security policies in this using JSoup and rewriting whitelisted URLs and elements with the correct nonce values. So, and also a note that if you do enable a strict content security policy, you do not get to use like on click or on select or any of those inline JavaScript methods on elements. So. Okay, that ends our blogs, tweets, and videos of the week, and let's talk about Find a Job. On getcfmljobs.com this week, there are over 55 Cold Fusion positions across 35 companies, 28 locations, and 5 countries. 2 new ones since our last podcast. We have a full-time senior application developer at Aurora, Illinois, and a contract Cold Fusion developer in Jacksonville, Florida. You can also check out our jobs channel in the CFML Slack team or the Box team Slack team. Okay, ForgeBox module of the week. We're going to continue our love of AI and talk about the ChatGPT API by Matt Gifford. This is a pretty lightweight component to talk to the core ChatGPT service, passing the API key and asking it to complete a prompt, which every time I see these, it just makes me laugh. You can make AI say some funny stuff. Probably useful too, but I just use it for funny stuff right now.
Soon we'll have a TV show entitled AI Says the Darndest Things.
I didn't keep it, but there was a Cold Fusion article I found in prepping today that I was very convinced it was written by AI. It was just so interesting, but I didn't put it in there for that reason.
We already know there's a site out there called like Update for Devs or something, and they basically scrape content. They do it from our blog and thousands of other blogs, but they run it through some sort of like, I don't think it's really AI, but they run it through some sort of like thesaurus, and they just swap words for synonyms. But it doesn't always work. Like they took one of our blog posts that said something about Docker images, and they changed it to say Docker photos, which obviously isn't the right synonym. But it's like they're trying to make the content look unique with some vaguely automated fashion, but it sometimes just sounds ridiculous.
Is that the same one that did update or perish for Modernize or Die?
Yes. Yeah, they scraped one of our Modernize or Die posts and they reworded it to say update or perish. Finally, the true meaning is revealed.
All right. Well, you can, to your heart's content, have ChatGPT in your application now with this awesome API wrapper. Thank you, Matt Gifford. That's available on ForgeBox or CommandBox using the slug ChatGPT. For our VS Code hint, tip, and trick of the week, we have Grammarly. First off, this made me laugh because if you pull up the Grammarly extension for VS Code, and I'll show it here for those viewing this on video. The description just says, this extension brings Grammarly to VS Code. That's it. Everything else is configuration. It doesn't even tell you what Grammarly is. It just assumes like, Haven't
you seen the ads?
And so for those of you that don't know, Grammarly is a tool to, like a communication assistance tool. It uses, now they're calling it AI-enabled services to help you choose the words in your prose. It works in Markdown, in text files. I think they have an HTML preview as well. So it can help your writing. I've used it occasionally, but I usually ignore it because I just focus too much to see the pop-ups that it's putting on me. But yeah, so Grammarly, VS Code, great to get those readmes written just the way you want. And here we are at the end of another wonderful podcast.
With our amiable Patreon supporters.
Our amiable ones, which is a compliment. Despite what Brad wanted you to think at the beginning of this.
We're conditioning you, so if you're thinking about being mean to us, you'll be like, oh, well, they did call me amiable, so I guess I'll have to lighten up.
Well, thank you to all of our Patreon supporters. You can support us as well on patreon.com/ordersolutions. Those that subscribe at the bronze level and up get ForgeBox Pro and CFCasts included as a perk. And all our Patreon supporters have access to their own private forum on the community website and a nifty badge, and their own channel on the Box Team Slack. And now and
access to cool things like our ChatGPT 2 weeks
true.
General public saw it.
That is very true. So, these perks and more could be yours on
Act now.
Patreon.com/ordersolutions. So we will finish by reading the names of our top Patreons. This is not all of you. We love all of you, and you can find all of our Patreons and other sponsors at ordersolutions.com/about-us/sponsors. And here are our top Patreons: John Wilson with Synaptrix, Tomorrow's Guides, Jordan Clark, Gary Knight, Mario Rodriguez, Giancarlo Gomez, David Bellinger, Dan Card, Jeffrey McGee with Sunstar Media, Dean Monder, Nolan Irk, and Abdul Raheen. Thank you, everybody. You stuck with us to the end. Don't forget to go get your Into the Box tickets. We really want to see you there. It's going to be an excellent conference. And we will talk to you later.
Bye-bye.
Show notes for this episode can be found at cfmlnews.modernizeordie.io, where you can also subscribe to your favorite podcast player like Spotify or iTunes. We also have the link to YouTube to find more videos just like this. The music used in this podcast is under a royalty-free license from Sound.com and Blue Tree Audio.